and that's interweaved. You'll notice that there's no credits to that here, but people figured it out about 10 years later. So the result is this fantastic weepy, which looks back at the change in attitudes in the 1920s through a story about a young woman who has one fulfilling night with a World War I soldier, gets pregnant, and raises her child as a single mother, and thrives without judgment. Welcome to the pre-code. Those are things that you can see. Nuggets from this conversational history book, though, are embedded throughout. So there's a mention of golf, or there's a huge parade they would have every time the troops would come home, or there's a party guest who is yammering on about socialism. But the film mostly focuses on an eye-opening chapter called The Revolution in Manners and Morals. Only Yesterday opens on Wall Street on Black Tuesday. And there's a cocktail party, anxious guests are there, slowly discovering that they're broke. And there is characterizations written in that are important, that audiences at the time would kind of nod along to and understand what the film was trying to say. So look for a gay couple, and the married hosts are both indiscreetly having affairs. Women are smoking and drinking with men, and ladies are telling off-color jokes. So these are all things that would never have happened 10 years ago. And Alan's book lays out the how and why. How do we get from the buttoned-up Victorian age to the out-of-control jazz age so fast? So it starts with the fact that, the United States was pretty sheltered, pretty isolated before World War I. But when soldiers and nurses went to France, well, they were exposed to the French. And then the slogan of the 20s became eat, drink, and be merry, for tomorrow we die, because they might. And then there was also the theories of Sigmund Freud that they learned while over there and brought home, which really tied everything to sex. And so soon, like, sexual denial just felt like silly and maybe even suffocating to the soul. So modesty, reticence, and chivalry were out. Sophistication was in. And sophistication meant drinking strong liquor and using strong language. Being a little indecent actually made a person more intriguing and a better party guest. So at this cocktail party, marking the end of the carefree happy days, we meet banker Jim, played by John Bowles, with his trademark attractive elegance that makes you want to lean in and smell his breath. And he receives a letter that flashes us back to 1918, and there the point of view changes to Mary Lane, who is played by luminous Margaret Sullivan in her debut film performance. After Mary realizes she's with child, her Southern parents ship her off to her broad-minded Aunt Julia, who lives in New York. And it's really through Aunt Julia that we are able to see the difference that the 19th Amendment had on women. Having the right to vote was great, right? But what it really did was made women legally equal to men. And women saw that as freedom to be themselves. So, the petticoats, the corsets, those are gone. Bobbing the hair. Women are going to college. Women are opening their own businesses. And Aunt Julia is unmarried by choice. She owns a beauty salon, something that did not exist until the 1920s, and has her own fabulous New York apartment. And so Aunt Julia also instills in Mary this similar self-possession. By the way, played by Billy Burke, and this will become your favorite performance of her ever. Like Glinda the Good Witch, forget it. This is So now that you understand Only Yesterday what was going on, that is to understand the Hays Code. So through the 20s, the lost generation is getting, fast, wild, out of control. And we have intellectuals who are enlightened and modern thinkers, and they see that in stage and screen and literature. Okay, but still, the majority of the country are from what was actually called the missionary generation. And they couldn't believe how quickly society was unraveling, and they didn't know how to stop it. So they looked at the movies, and they said, that's it, that's the problem. And so the studios are like, okay, you need change, hear you, don't want government regulation, so what we're gonna do is put this guy in, Will Hays, and he's gonna regulate it for us. So that sounds great, but you should know that Will Hays was a PR guy. So he would sit there and do these pulpit pounding speeches, decrying the moral decay that was happening in film and how he was gonna stop it. But really, he was writing very polite recommendations to the studios of, you might want to take out this, you should take out that. Most of them were not taken. So Only Yesterday, known for audaciously featuring premarital sex and illegitimate pregnancy without shame, actually received compliments from the Hays office on how they handled the delicate sex situation. After the code becomes enforced, Only Yesterday would be pulled off screens and not seen again for decades. I do want to tell you a few things, because the Hays office of 1933 did kind of do their job, and they demanded some phrases be eliminated, okay? So they said these: God Almighty, my God, God Forsaken, Good God, Good Lord, and Mrs. Rich Bitch. Most are removed, although astute ears will hear Edna May Oliver use the Lord's name in vain. And then the Hays office was also adamant about cutting the dialogue between two mannish-looking women because of its inferences of lesbianism. Junior fights to keep this, but the code wins this one. And then what's extra fascinating is because they don't say anything about the two gay men. There's not a word about that, who are played by the fussy Franklin Pangborn and Barry Norton. Okay, so you guys already know Pangborn. He was a scene stealer. He was famous for playing very prissy, twitching characters who was just like above everybody else. Hotel managers, maitre d's, and most of all, what the industry called pansies. So gay characters were not unusual in the pre-code era, but they were usually there for a reason, and that was to laugh at. And that's unfortunate. And what becomes more unfortunate is after the enforcement of the code, gay characters become obsolete. But here, you'll notice that there is nothing in the dialogue that will trip the code. And allowing a lavender unicorn, we have a gay couple depicted with normalcy. So today, Only Yesterday exists as a museum piece made specifically to capture how attitudes were more open and how women had more agency and opportunity in the 20s. So from Universal Studios in 1933, let's travel back to Only Yesterday.